So you've yes, it's got much higher. I think maybe you need to be careful about what you say. Anyway, shall we shall we get him start?
Yes, we can start. Yeah, so I was just going to briefly run through the Strategy and Policies work program, and this may actually be more helpful to me than for you. It was just me trying to figure out, attempting to fill in Big Bob's shoes in this role. So Big Bob's shoes. You know. I didn't say anything about its shoe size. So I didn't. So yeah, I just want to go through the things that we are looking at delivering this year. Yes. Here they all are, nicely laid out. Yeah, so we're bringing Future Zone post LTP. That is our overarching strategy for the district. And you can see this awesome slide that Sharon's getting good at reproducing in her head. So what we're trying to do is set up that big picture in place, and then so from there we start going through into area plans and into those action plans, understanding through those strategic priorities what it all means. Start coordinating all those things. Some of the stuff you raised earlier in the meeting about how these things are coordinated, how these things flow through. This is our kind of broad overarching plan to get to that point. So the first step is that strategy in the top, which says this is our vision, these are the outcomes we're seeing, this is what it looks like for the district. So that's happening later this year, through there, Q2, 3 this year. The biodiversity team working on that biodiversity strategy with the hearings next week on that and finishing up on that work. And so then there'll be all the flow-on actions from that coming through. The policy team are working through the mediations. Here's a list of them all there. There'll be, if they can get resolved in the mediation, that's great. Otherwise, they'll head off to sort out an appeal. Also, there'll need to be some plan change work started, usually a plan change one to start fixing up some of the immediate issues, and then some of the, as we go through the plan, how it all starts working, start fixing all those things as well. So that's sort of work will kick off as well. In the sustainability space, we've got three key things. We've got the climate partnership plan through the Merrill Forum. We'll have an emissions reduction plan for us and a sustainability plan. Keith is finishing that up, and that will be delivered mid-year as well. And later today, you'll get a briefing after this on the residential development guidelines from Gavi, and they'll be looking at other guidelines and things around fencing, signage, things like that too. So they are all the things that are going to happen throughout the year. So just making sure that you're aware of all those things coming up. That and if you've got any questions about it, you can raise them now, or you can talk to me later about how it's all going to work. So I just thought it'd be a really good chance at the start of the year to sort of outline all the things coming through to you, so you can kind of keep that in mind as you work through. So yes.
Thank you, Ben. Is there any questions on what Ben's presented? No. Very good.
That's great.
Just one thing. Oh, listen, Madam Chair, I just wonder whether the dates that are in here, it's kind of like having a board plan for each of our committees that we have, so that we would have an understanding at the front end of the meeting what items we would expect to be on the agenda at the moment, and then what future meeting dates other items would be coming to, so that when we get to a meeting, we might have a question, but actually that report's coming next month or to the next meeting, and we would just know about that. So if these dates could be included in future agendas, that would be helpful.
I think that would be good. You got any response? Yep. No other questions?
also those we might have to keep shifting those dates, but yeah.
So is it Garby's turn now, or is there some other thing that you've got for us?
No, that's all. I've got no tricks up my sleeve. No, yeah. So yeah, today we've got Garby doing some urban development guidelines that she's been working on that she wants to talk through, and then after that, George will be going through some of the future zone visions and stuff to get your flavour and feel on that too. So yes, Garby.
Right, everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, we'll sort of start off with residential development guides. We've been talking about medium density quite a bit. This is basically just an introduction in what we've been working on for a long time. It sort of includes a lot of work in terms of providing some guidance for residential development in the district, and we've tried to put that into one guide and tried to put it into a representation. The document itself is over 70 pages. So just to give you a bit of an introduction, sort of talked about recent challenges and opportunities in the housing market, and also in terms of growth in Selwyn, which sort of leads to the reasons for the guide and also what it can cover and what it can't cover. We'll be talking about a bit who's this guide actually for, who will be using it, and who was involved as part of obviously a large piece of work. It's a team effort. I will talk a tiny little bit about the design structure to give you an idea of what it includes and of the objectives, and also important the next steps from here. And of course, questions. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of, we've been talking about the changes of legislation with medium density standards now upon us, or for a while now. And these sort of snapshots and pictures of potential issues. Are our neighbourhoods actually still connected? Is new development allowing passive surveillance? Is it private? Is there a high level of safety? Are we actually creating attractive street scenes? So within that, there is opportunity for variation and choice, but at the same time, we're also seeing that there's quite a bit of a challenge to achieve actually good design outcomes. And also within that is that these design standards have been developed for the North Island and in a metropolitan context. So we're sort of looking at how do they apply actually to Selwyn. Which brings me sort of to the next slide. We have quite a few dinosaurs on the current web page of design guidelines going back to 2009, and best practice has changed with, grown, and also I guess new standards have developed in that time. So I guess there was a need really to collate some of those design guides and put them into one document, and then also to incorporate legislation changes, the MDRS, and if that changes it again, to have a document that's flexible that we can adopt as we go. That ease of access and flexibility is one main thing why this is important, that it's an online document. And the other thing is that I mentioned earlier, we need to have something that's really Selwyn specific and applying a Selwyn lens to it. This sort of guideline or guide is a non-statutory document, so it kind of sits, below the district plan and the engineering code of practice. So what we're trying to do is we're visualizing with pictures and diagrams and photos the why and the how of some of design outcomes. And it gives us the opportunity to go actually beyond what a minimum requirement is, but try to guide what the best outcome is. And in that regard, it also strengthens other council specific strategies. What we're not doing is we don't try to be expert where we're not, but we will refer to these sort of documents or refer to other areas. So the document will have a lot of hyperlinks and references. How are we seeing this guideline being used? So first, internal, we would like staff to actually use the guidelines to get examples and illustrations when they're doing an application, for example, for a discretionary activity. But we also would like developers and consultants to get the right information about Selwyn, what's important in the Selwyn district, and to understand a bit that context that's quite different to other regions and metropolitan areas. Developing that design guide was, I would say, was kind of quite a big effort and definitely a joint effort. So we've consulted internally with people across the different teams and within you know, the different departments. We held then specific workshops so that people within the individual disciplines could give their feedback, and we've received a lot of feedback, which I was grateful for. Also, we got external feedback from urban designer, landscape architects and engineers, and also consultants that sort of provided a bit of a, I guess, a different perspective, because they're actually coming from the other end and representing the developers. And we got feedback from ECAN and CCC, and we also involved Mahanui. I won't go into too much detail, but just the basic idea of the design guide is that we sort of have in an introduction the vision, the principles and the process and the outcomes, and that filters through then the design principles and the Te Aranga design principles to then lead to an assessment. And that assessment that's based on urban scale systems. So we have the neighbourhood scale as sort of the widest scale, all down to the unit scale, and then we're filtering through 6 urban design themes. We're providing then guidance for each of these different scales. And we also have kind of a key consideration package that sort of is a wee summary that's in a separate document. Give you a snapshot of what this looks like. This is just the street scale. Obviously, what we want to achieve is we want to promote better urban design throughout the district, and we want to enhance the reader's understanding of the why. That's it in a nutshell. We can see design standards and best practice, how they get better communicated if we illustrate them. Picture speaks 1,000 words, so this is kind of, I guess, the essence of the guide. And this is sort of looking at a best practice example for a street in Selwyn. Next steps are, so we've got a draft document that's at the moment being finalised with comms, and we'll take that for adoption to council in May. And then as a next step, I've also put down promotion, because I think this is a really important bit of it we need to take to make sure that this is a live document. We need to actually promote it internally and externally, and we've also started on certain aspects of that, and I did pick out, I'm just picking one, glazing as something that we're already sort of educating the staff internally, and I see that to continue throughout the year. Questions?
Malcolm.
Great work, Gavin. Excellent to see. I'm aware of some people wanting to put developments in at the moment. What guidelines are they sitting under as we speak? Those who are wanting to do something medium density at this time, already ahead of us, what sort of framework are they having to adhere to at the moment?
Oh, I mean, the framework is still at the moment, the 2 district plans.
Right.
And at the moment we have on our website, we've still got the subdivision design guideline from 2009.
Yeah.
And a medium density guide as well. So the idea is that this will bring them all together and we're getting
Excellent.
rid of the other ones.
So how will this go? I mean, at the moment, as been mentioned previously, we have an issue with developers putting caveats on subdivisions where we can only have 1 property per section. Is this some way of getting around that, or is this giving us a lever to be able to stopping that happening?
Short answer is no, because this is the guidance. So where this comes in is basically, that's what the wish list is. We're getting developers in and they have a piece of land. So aspects of this, it's a fairly meaty document, but part of it is infill and intensification. So that's, for example, looking at a 1/4 acre section and what can be done on that. So I'm hoping that a developer comes in and says, I want to do put another house on my block, what can I do? And then we can sort of talk through that and showing examples within the guide.
Excellent. I look forward to May being adopted.
Deborah?
Thanks, Gabby. Look, on page 60, you've got a lovely diagram there. Yeah.
Streetscape.
Oh, sorry.
7, number 7.
Oh, sorry. What I've noticed is,
No, it's
Streetscape with the bus.
7. 7, that one's 5. Yeah.
that's,
Yep.
that's the one. Lovely picture, should be what it's like. I've noted that what we've got is a wide footpath cycleway. We've obviously got no garages to house the cars, but we have provided cars alongside the road. And I just wonder where our engineering code of practice is actually sitting alongside, these guidelines, because that would require more than an 8 metre road width to actually provide for the parking that's not provided for on the housing. And so that's one issue I've picked up. With medium density housing and other housing, don't have to supply parking on the within the land area itself. So those that do have cars, I can understand why we have to provide probably extra width to cater for them. Otherwise, the rubbish truck at 8 metres will not be able to get down to the road to collect the rubbish. Just simple things like this. And I'm just wondering how much work's been done with code of practice, and also, did I say, who's paying for what? What portion will be picked up by the ratepayer versus what portion will be picked up by the developer with the cost-sharing arrangements of where we were planning on going with this guideline. And the other question is more for those that are purchasing the properties. How are we dealing with high-rise? And this is probably outside ours, but that's how we collect the rate on a unit, body corporate. And we also have the old cross lease. Are we allowing that if someone builds a series of units, maybe on one section, that they will all have their own separate title, or will they all be cross leased with regards to how they actually, ownership and for rating purposes? Have we actually drilled down that far?
There was quite a lot in there.
Sorry.
So I'm trying to answer what first and foremost, have we been like these guidelines here? Definitely we have worked with the engineering code of practice. So that's I can tick that off. So the team has seen this, and we've actually put quite a bit of effort in trying to leave the technical bits in the engineering code of practice, but put the pretty pictures, dare I say, into here. So kind of separate the two things. And within an 8-meter carriageway, you can definitely accommodate the driveway and the car parking to the side. I actually did a plan today where we did that. But so yes, we have definitely worked with the engineering code of practice. The other thing with I guess parking and these aspects, we have got examples of how we can accommodate parking on the side, off-site. It's part of that as well. And I think the other aspect was like the costs. That's definitely not part of this guide. This guide is more kind of illustrating the how and the why. But I think your questions are sort of valid questions. Probably can't be addressed within the guide. Yeah.
Yeah, fully appreciate it can't be in the guide, but just from, you know, the fallout of this type of housing, these are the sorts of legal issues that you will get with the fallout with regards to issues that lead to fencing, compliance, etc. And I just want to highlight, is there any way that we can tidy up all of this, different legislative ownership model, units, titles, etc., or lobby somebody to do it, because it can be really, really messy.
Elizabeth?
I'll try not to make a mess of all my notes, Gabby. Sorry, and I've got a whole lot as well. I might want to take notes. Some of the thing I love on page, the same page. I won't give you a number. And I love this design layout. I noticed you've got the cyclists on the footpath. So are we looking at here, this being part of the policy where you have those joint lane? There's like a painted lane for cyclists that share with the pedestrian. I think if so, I think that sounds like a really good, safe and feasible option. There's a number of things that I wanted to talk about. I think obviously we're really looking at sustainable options here. Are there ways that we can write into or have written in here potential things that we'd like developers to address, and also ourselves in our policy? We need to put our money where our mouth is. And one of the big things I keep saying is, or have been saying in the past, is when we're building fences and we're building things, can we look at the most sustainable options that we can provide? For example, future post, you know what that is? It's a plastic molded fence post instead of the standard or treated wooden timber. Can we start putting those into our regions so that we are creating sustainable options, encouraging passive house? I did want to ask what passive surveillance was. It was on a former slide. Are we looking at some key considerations so that we've got sorry, I'm not sure what that bit was. Oh yeah, so you've got in here quite a bit of green space. Is that going to be a requirement for us going forward, that there's a percentage of green space in every street so that we've got that water absorption and heavy rains and things like that?
Okay, again, I'll try my best. You have to remind me if I miss something. So last thing first, passive surveillance is terminology in urban design. It's basically enabling, and it stems from the crime prevention through environmental design principles. They're national principles that we've sort of thread through our district plan and also these guidance documents. It basically means eyes on the street, so you're allowing people to have observation of the public space, and the public space, and that is the street, the footpath, walkways. We've got in the district plan at the moment provisions to enable that, but we're just strengthening that within the design guide as well. Green space within the street corridor, we're not prescribing any percentage in terms of that, but we're giving best practice example of what within a street corridor should be addressed and what the function of the street is. Street quite different to a road because it has place function, and that's definitely addressed within there. I've just given you one picture. As I said, it's 77 pages. There's quite a lot of detail to it. And then the third one that you mentioned about sustainability and implementing, I'd love to incorporate some of what you've said and add that. And this is something that why I think an online document will be a much more flexible instrument where we can actually put another page in just in terms. So we have the build form as one chapter, and we could include that. There are already aspects in there, but not that specific one that you mentioned.
Megan?
Yeah, kia ora. So I'm used to seeing the residential development guides and design guides through district plan reviews in other districts. And the way that I've got two questions. So the way that I ordinarily would see it is there would be the zones and there would be a subdivision chapter that sets the rules. And it will say, if you do A, it's permitted, but if you do B, then it's restricted or discretionary. And normally it's a matter of discretion. I usually see it as a matter of discretion that they're referring to the residential design guides. Is the intent for this document to form part of those rules around district plan?
Yeah, that's exactly the case. So for internal staff, when somebody comes in that doesn't meet the permitted status, they can then use the guidelines and hopefully find some examples or find the arguments to actually say yes, no, or maybe. Yeah. So, and we can't refer to it in the district plan because if we change anything in here, then that the cross-referencing becomes really difficult. So that's why we have to keep it separate.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful and sets up my next question as well. You've talked about engagement with Mahanui Kurataiao, and we have an iwi management plan, a bit out of date now, but it does have some guidelines in there, particularly around subdivision. And I just wanted to know to what extent, I know you've engaged, has that influenced the final product?
We've basically sent them a draft document and got review back in terms of using the, I guess, bilingual language, and also those design principles that I mentioned in the structure. They have been kind of applied throughout the document.
Sophie?
Yeah, thank you very much, Gabi. I love that this is coming to us, even just a wee bit of it as a briefing. It's really good to see. And I love that you've been having conversations with lots of different groups, because this does cover everywhere. And how a street actually ends up looking is kind of like the culmination of, you throw in all of these other strategies. This is how it's supposed to work. So it's got to actually be bound together somehow. And this is a really good start. My question was around reserves, partly because the picture on the slide following that one up there, it does seem to have a wee bit of a reserve there. And I'm just wondering, would those be incorporated somewhere in the design guide as well? Or is that still a reserve management plan thing? Mainly because we have occasionally, we bounce around these conversations around tree canopy and planting Indigenous biodiversity and everything. So is it more of an urban design thing, or is it a reserve management plan, or should we just bring it all into one place?
No, I loved that when it came up, the tree canopy. I was like, yeah, because this is definitely mentioned in the guide as well. And you're right. I feel like with the urban design that all the different disciplines kind of come together, and so we have included reserve considerations, and so once you read the document, it's within each scale. So for example, within a neighborhood scale, there are reserves mentioned and their function, and then you basically explain that then in the next level down. So reserves in their various functions, they are definitely mentioned in the guide, and their purpose and their use, and so they're within a separate kind of theme, and within stormwater, water races, and those sort of aspects. Oh, and trees.
Very good. Thanks, Gabi, for that presentation, and look forward to seeing the actual whole document. And here we've got Ben again.
No, I'm just tech support. George is up.
So Future Selwyn.
Mm. Yeah. Right, we're cooking. Kia ora koutou. Today I'm coming back with you with a update on some of the mahi we've been putting in since the end of last year in Future Selwyn, particularly around that aspiration space on the vision for Future Selwyn, and also the district picture, which is the spatial application of the vision and the aspiration. So apologies, this for a first slide is a bit of a barrier entry. It's a bit chaotic. This again is a slide mainly for me to understand what's going on, but it shows the progression of developing the draft vision for Future Selwyn and how we've been drawing on the voice of our community, how elected members have been inputting into the vision, and how we've involved staff. So it shows all the junctures and all the opportunities for input. Notably, for elected members, that includes those workshops facilitated by Anne Molyneux from Deloitte, going through the strategic choice cascade. So we started out with what is our aspiration. As we progress through the strategic choices, thinking about what's our role, we've started to refine that aspiration even further. So just recapping on that first workshop on what is our aspiration, we found there was a considerable amount of consensus on what we want and what we don't want. And there are some discrete areas where there was still some work to be done. So the Mahi and the economic development strategy has provided us with some insight from the business community and the wider community on about getting the balance right, particularly on those two sticking points about economic diversification versus specialization, and what the role of tourism is in our future. We have tried to include the direction of travel on those two sticking points from the workshop in the vision for Future Selwyn, but I just want to mention that the economic development strategy is still exploring that further and getting that balance right. So the Future Selwyn strategic framework sets out our aspiration, and it's guided by strategic outcomes and directions. Our aspiration is presented in two parts: a vision and the spirit of Future Selwyn. The vision is a short, sharp statement, encapsulates the overarching long-term aspiration for the district and its people. It's succinct, and that ensures that the vision remains focused and easily communicable. So if someone asks you what Future Selwyn is about, which I've spent most of my time trying to discover for myself, I've got one short, sharp tagline I'll be able to say, and hopefully that will be the same for many of us here. The spirit of Future Selwyn is a more detailed and clear and cohesive narrative of the future of Waikiri Selwyn. So when you say that one sentence and people go, okay, but what do you really mean? That's when you read out the statement, and that gives the spirit or the essence of what we're trying to achieve. The vision and the spirit of Future Selwyn should work together, which is why you see them on the diagram. They go together, and it should be answering the question about what future do we want, and the outcomes that sit under the vision expresses what does that look like, and the direction should be answering the question, well, how do we get there? The strategic priorities, which were on page 40 of the agenda, an alien item from Ben on the strategy and policy work program, outlines those key areas, those strategic priorities where we need to focus our work to deliver transformational change and cover a number of the directions and outcomes. So slide 5, I've committed the cardinals in a PowerPoint, and my school teachers will be really, really disappointed in me for this, but I didn't know how else to present it. I went to the Big Cheese, I went to Bob, I asked Ben, how should I do it? And yeah, cardinals in a PowerPoint, so I've got a lot of text to read out verbatim. You said to do a dance? Yeah, well. So I'm going to read this out. Apologies. I'll try and make it like a movie voiceover and add a bit of flair, but The draft Spirit of Selwyn is our future Selwyn is a Waikirikiri Selwyn in balance, from the mountains to the sea and everything in between. Our future Selwyns want a sustainable prosperity where innovation, creativity and ambition ensures intergenerational well-being and opportunities for all. Our place is a distinct, livable, vibrant, resilient and connected, enriching our lives now and into the future. Our sustainable and connected urban form sees improved connections between towns, new opportunities and choices for how we live, work and get around. Our growth is in harmony with Te Taio, on which we depend and care for so that we and future generations can prosper. The Māori and health of Te Waiora is restored and there's an abundance of kai and other resources. Our big backyard with all its mountains, lakes, forests, wetlands, rivers, estuaries, the coast and our clear sky is a tonga on our doorstep which we all collectively care for. Our future Selwyn is a place where people feel they belong, are able to connect one another, share experiences, celebrate our differences and value our heritage. Like the kahikatia, the strength and resilience of our community comes from how we support and connect with one another. Our future Selwyn is a place where we ensure that we can all prosper and lead fulfilling lives. Our economy is productive and resilient, driven by innovation and creativity. We embrace new technologies and get ahead of the curve, with infrastructure and investment unlocking the full potential of Waikirikiri Selwyn. Our future Selwyn is a shared future where enduring and collaborative relationships are built on trust, reciprocity, commitment and mutual respect. Te Tiriti o Waitangi guides our partnership with Mana Whenua. We work together to realise intergeneral well-being for both people and Te Taio. Our local voice is loud. We advocate and influence for our people and all of Waikirikiri Selwyn. Our communities are empowered to take action on things they care about and listen to when they call upon others for change. So that was my Braveheart rendition of that. And yeah, that's the draft Spirit of Selwyn that we have at the moment, but would really appreciate comments on that. But I'll just keep working through the rest of the strategic framework. Did it sound like chat? Oh no, actually, this was my night. I had like 6 cups of coffee to come up with this gold. So
I think you did very well with reading that out.
Oh yeah. I'll keep going, and we'll.
There's no one wants to any comments on that before we go to this bit.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Everything needs more dance. I'm still waiting. Anyway, we'll go on to the next one. Thank you.
Ka pai. So, just get comfy again. As I've said, the vision is the shorthand for the spirit, and it's there in the middle of our 4 primary outcomes. It reads quite simply, you'll be glad to know compared to that last slide, a livable, innovative and connective Waikirikiri Selwyn filled with opportunity and prosperity. So with that, there's 4 primary outcomes that are essential for delivering on the vision and the spirit. Each of these have a number of outcomes and associated directions sitting under those primary outcomes. So it would be quite a long time to go through each of those. So we've just pulled out one to focus on. So the outcomes should answer what does that vision look like, and the directions are about how we get there. So a healthy and restored environment is our primary outcome. And there's a sub-outcome there, a rich and diverse land with a direction to green our urban environment. So pretty topical when we're talking about urban tree canopy cover and greening in the public realm. So it's a pretty good one to pull out in hindsight or retrospect. We're still doing further work to refine and develop these outcomes and directions that sit under the 4 main outcomes and the vision. So I'd be quite keen to share that with all of you again. Now, the district picture is a spatial application of the vision and the aspiration. You can see it's a interactive live map. So part of Future Selwyn is being future focused and having our spatial plan and our strategic direction live in a web-based format. So eventually the spatial maps will be able to be interrogated, where you can see the data and information, and you can turn layers on and off. So it's quite a step change in how we've been doing planning in the past. So that's just an example of how the direction in the strategic framework has a spatial application. The district picture has district level significance mapping, but the area plans will be following on from the district picture. So this example takes the direction, which sits under the outcomes in the strategic framework, and just going through that, how it's applied is green our urban environment, is shown in the future Selwyn district picture with our green areas and our corridors with the opportunity to connect significant natural and ecological areas. And through that, we'll have more detailed area-based planning, which is spatial plans for 3 distinct areas of the district. Non-spatial action plans will be developed, which is our strategic priority, is a blue-green network action plan. That's flowing on from the Greater Christchurch spatial plan with the joint work programme to develop a blue-green network strategy for Greater Christchurch. But part of that key to key tie principle of having everything joined up is we need a district-wide blue-green network plan, and then the spatial direction as well as the non-spatial direction starts informing those outputs. So activity management plans, long-term plans and annual plans. So hopefully that gives an insight into how the framework will be applied and direct our future mahi. And I'll leave it there. That's pretty much everything I had to present on, but welcome Pātai and any comments as well. So thank you.
Sam.
Thanks. I think it's great, and I like the overall direction of the work. I read the draft Spirit of Future Selwyn and thought it was good that we didn't try and just make it a sentence, and that it talks about a whole lot of things that I think, well, I definitely wanted to see here for us. It didn't also, though, seem particularly Selwyn specific. So there's a few things about Te Wahora and locating things here, and I just wondered if, and I spoke to Ben during the break, Rolleston is reasonably flat and non-distinct, and part of the reason why people want to be here is because of what it's close to rather than because what's actually, so there's a balance here between what we are saying we are and why people are driven to be here. A couple of things that did stand out to me, though. The second paragraph talks about people, so Future Selwyn is a place where people feel they belong, and I just wondered whether we wanted, what the intent was behind that word. And I read it and it felt individual to me, and I wondered whether we wanted it to be something about families or something that talked about how people relate to one another rather than just a whole lot of individuals. But people might be the right word there. The second line talks about kahikatea, and I just wondered where that had come from and if that was informed by something else. And the last paragraph, after we talk about Te Tiriti or Waitangi, it talks about both people, and I just think it should say our people. So just some reasonably small things, but I just felt like I'd highlight those for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Borton. That's really great feedback, and also unpacking one of the questions. The kahikatea came from kororo from Councillor Epiha in one of the workshops. I think he spoke to that when we presented some of our ideas about bringing people and being stronger together. So it was came out in the feedback from the workshop. So we try to incorporate that. Recognize people is really individualistic. So perhaps it's about communities, it's about whānau. So can look to make those changes as well about at the level about Te Tiriti. And we'll do some work on the Selwyn specificity. Appreciate that.
Yeah, just the Spirit of Selwyn, it's great, and it'd be somewhere I'd love to move to.
Yeah.
Megan.
Yeah. So when I read the draft Spirit of Future Selwyn, what really stands out there threaded throughout is environmental protection. It does talk about a balanced approach to environmental protection, but it is environmental protection nonetheless. And then when I go to the next part and it talks about the vision statement, and I'm aware that there's been lots and lots of workshops that's got us to this point. So if the vision statement has been agreed, then I'm not suggesting for one moment that it's not, that it's changed. However, one really focuses on environment and sustainability, which isn't quite captured in that vision statement, which talks about livable, innovative, connected prosperity, but not sustainability. So it didn't feel like it quite connected. But I really like the spirit, the draft spirit. That's the first comment. The second part is when it comes to the draft spirit, and it's talking about the Māori and the health of Waihora, and that there's an abundance of kai, I think the word there needs to be mahinga kai, because kai is often quite limited to food source, whereas Mahinga Kai is a broader concept. So that's the only other statement. Thanks.
Thank you. So no other questions? Thank you, George. Is so where do we go through?
Are you waiting for a dance, or
I'm always
is that a requirement?
There is so much expectation, and now Ben's even made it even more that he was going to give. So, but anyway, oh, Sophie, were you wanting to?
Yeah,
ask?
sorry, I just having another look at this the circle and trying to think what was it that looks like it. It was so there's a section that's about a sustainable and connected urban form, and don't get me wrong, I love that. But the way that we often use words around a healthy and restored environment and everything else, which I also love, but that tends to refer to things like wetlands and forests and bush, which are fantastic. But I'm not sure where in this circle as a whole do we fit rural communities and people who work on the land, sort of thing. I don't know whether that might be in those other outcomes and directions and everything else that I haven't seen yet. I'm just kind of hoping it's in there somewhere because they are still a big part of this place.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So we're still developing the sub outcomes and directions, but you're right. These four outcomes they're not intended to be ambiguous, but they're meant to be overarching a series of other outcomes. And from recollection about our rural communities is about a great place to call home for all. It's about healthy and restored environments, thinking about the industry and the work out in rural communities, as well as prosperous people. It's changed from a prosperous place, recognizing it's not about one place or a place doing well. It's about the people, and we all need to do well, and we all need to prosper together. So, and rural communities is really strong through prosperous people too. But you're right; it's buried one level below. But the idea is we didn't have something specific for rural communities and rural areas because it's interwoven throughout all of these four primary outcomes. But I take that on board, and I'll make sure that what sits under there is explicit about that, if not so already.
Thanks for that, Elizabeth.
Oh yeah, I'm just feeding into that. You've got a sustainable and connected urban form, but would it not be sustainable and connected communities? So that you then cover the basis of what Sophie's talking about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's about connecting communities as well, and perhaps that's again a layer deeper and about a great place to call home, and then connections in terms of prosperous people, in terms of connections that we need for our economy to do well, and for our living standards of well-being. I think the sustainable and connected urban form is really about obligations to deliver for the urban environment, and how this work is about aligning with the direction in the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, but making sure that it's focused on the Selwyn district and looking beyond our boundaries, realising that Greater Christchurch draws a line, but we've got growing towns and communities outside of Greater Christchurch now. So it's making sure that they can be sustainable and connected in the future. But I suppose the point of Future Selwyn is updating the Selwyn 2031, the district development strategy, and there is a concerted effort to have a specific urban focus, considering that's an area where we get a lot of different challenges, and it needs a specific focus, but that's not meant to be to neglect our rural communities and our rural areas, which are immensely important as well. So I could potentially have a look at how we can balance that further, because you're right, the sustainable connected urban form is elevated to in the top four, but that's just recognizing the amount of mahi that goes with spatial planning for urban areas in particular.
Cool. Thank you, George. So I have no other questions. We'll move on to the next item. So thank you, George. So bylaw work program. Thanks, Sue. So you're going to speak to both the next two items, the parking one as well?
So kia ora. No,
Yep.
I've got a big scene to follow up there. There's been no dancing and no entertainment. I was a bit worried there. I've got two things coming up on these briefings. The first one is the bylaw work programme. And I won't go into too much detail there other than to say when, and you will know this, when a bylaw is created, the first review has to happen in the first 5 years and thereafter it's every 10 years. Going back historically, there were slightly different rules. So we do have different timelines on there, but we do monitor which ones are due. Now, we do have underway at the moment, just in the initial inception stages, there's a dog control bylaw, the public places bylaw, and the stormwater and drainage bylaw. Now, a couple of them, the dog control bylaw, we were awaiting the recruitment of a new team leader there in animal control, and I thought I'd bring him along today to introduce you to him. So this is Matt Van Keulen. So I thought I'd bring him in and introduce him to what happens in a council meeting. Has anybody got any questions on this?
Sophie.
Yeah, it's not on the list and we haven't got one at the moment that I'm aware of, but obviously there's been LGNZ's produced a draft freedom camping bylaw. Are we at the stage where we need to put that into the work plan as well?
Yeah, we were awaiting, there was a few legislative changes and I am in the process of talking with our reserves team about where we need to go forward with that. So that will be coming up over the next year.
Phil?
And what's the public places? So these are bylaws that are coming into the work program. They're being developed at the moment.
Yeah.
So what's the nuts of the public places?
Yes, so the public places bylaw controls trading in public places and the use of public land. So that may be a mobile food vendor wanting to operate alongside a road. It may be somebody wanting to lease part of the public pavement outside a run of businesses. And it's all about not curtailing the activity, but controlling it so we can coordinate where everybody is. It overlaps slightly with certain events that happen, but it just ensures that we don't allow 10 different food vendors in one spot at one time that impacts on other traders in the area. So there's a variety of different things there.
So would it cover markets as well?
Not all the time. Some markets are permitted activities under the district plan, and it depends on the location. So there's a multitude of different things there. Some markets happen in school grounds, and as long as that can tie back to the original designation, I'll be getting a bit in depth here, but there's a whole heap of different factors. Sometimes markets will need a public permit to operate. So I can give you one example would be the recent market that's happening in the community centre. So within the community centre will be controlled as an event. Any of that activity that goes outside is in a public place and may impact on other traders and the public using that area. So may need a public places bylaw permit.
So finally, public places, is that which definition of public place are you using? Isn't this using the council-owned public places or public places as defined by Crimes Act?
Council-owned.
Council-owned.
Yeah.
So
So it's what we control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lydia?
I just had a question around the traffic and parking bylaw, and I'd had a discussion with Sharon around it. And are we going to see that come back for review in the 2024 period?
So the traffic and parking bylaw is due for full review in 2029. That's not to say we couldn't review that sooner, and we can. So that will be something to discuss with the roading team. But I think they probably have some recommendations and changes that they would like to see. So that's something for further discussion.
Cool. Elizabeth?
The dog control bylaw, have you, you've started the procedure for reviewing that at the moment, and are you looking at, is there any potential changes that are in the works?
No, so that's going to be commencing now that we've got Matt on board. We'll begin those initial discussions, see if it's fit for purpose. There'll be, if there are going to be any changes that are needed, that would be discussed and consulted on. So at this stage, I don't see any changes, but there may be some smaller minor tweaks.
Cool, thank you. So, parking.
Parking. Right. So bear with me while I get all my paperwork. Right, so as always, I had a bit of an epiphany this morning and thought it'd be really good to share with you some images that weren't circulated before. So I've got a few smaller ones that I'm going to try and use on here in a moment, because a picture will paint 1,000 words. Now, so I wanted to give everybody a bit of an update on the parking approach within Selwyn. Now, this approach has been going on over 5 years. I know we've been having discussions for 7 years at least. Now, I would take it that everybody has read this briefing paper, and to add to that, what I wanted to say was we took this parking approach purely because of the growing volume of complaints within the Selwyn district. The public were insistent that council had to uphold our duties and enforce the parking rules. Now, we took a phased approach. We are probably the only, if not one of few, councils that never did parking enforcement until recently. We decided to take a fresh look at that and decided to do that phased approach, and that phased approach happened over no less than 3 years. We educated. We went out, we discussed with people, we issued non-tickets on vehicles. Now, that approach still continues, but we've slowly introduced the enforcement side where we absolutely have to. So the intent of the approach is to educate and uphold the rules. Safety is our priority, always has been. It's keeping the roads safe. We do not seek to infringe in order to gain revenue. So, and I'm quite emphatic about that, despite what people may say publicly. We do not have targets. We do not set out to give a number of infringements or target any areas. We respond on complaints. So where people will contact us, report an issue, if the officer goes out and deals with that vehicle and there are another 3 vehicles committing the same offence or offending similarly alongside it, they have to follow up with those as well. They do not go out looking. It is only on the back of people getting in touch with us. So, as I said, we continue to warn people. We continue to educate. We consider all appeals, and the appeals have to be in the prescribed form, which is online submissions or in writing. They cannot be via a person verbally. They cannot be a negotiation with the parking officer. It can't be a phone call to me. It has to be in writing, and that's how we look at them. All of those are considered. Now, with regard to, sorry, bit of feedback there. I will see if I can do, bear with me, on here, a couple of images. Right, so on here, I thought I would show you when people say, we parked on the footpath as we thought it was safer. On the left there, you will see some of the reasonings that people give us and the actual offending, and I've blacked out the registration plates here. These are the justifications that people come up with, and you may come across members of the public that say, I was only just on the footpath, or I was only just on the berm, or I thought it was safer to do this. And these are the photos that are taken by the officer when they're issuing these infringements at the time. They capture a photo of every single thing. So we can go back and challenge or review. I'm not saying we will get it right 100% of the time when we'll look at all of this. So all of this information is available to us. That one there told us in the appeal, I was not blocking a footpath, emphatically denied that they were doing it. That picture clearly shows that blue car blocking the footpath. Nobody can get past that. The justifications range from all manner of reasons. Some may be valid. There may be an urgency or an emergency. we will consider everything, but I was dropping off a heavy TV and leaving the car there for an hour really isn't acceptable. People cannot get past that footpath, and we are encouraging people to walk to school, to cycle to school. We've got to keep these pavements clear. Footpaths are for feet, not for vehicles. So with this, I thought I'd provide a little bit of public feedback. Sometimes, and we do see the social media comments, and it is pretty self-regulating, but the feedback that we are getting at the moment is really, really positive from the public. And these little snippets that I saw, and I thought I'd just share them with you, where people are, as I said, it's self-regulating. They're challenging the people that they live amongst for parking incorrectly. And you clearly see there, that was one person who was in a wheelchair that needed to get out and take a photo to show that they had to go into the road. I've got video footage of similar issues as well. So we also work with the school safety coordinators as well. So this is the hidden stuff that goes on in the background. So we don't make all these rules. The legislation is the road user rules that we follow, and we have to uphold them. The only one that we control is the parking on a berm, and we do manage that very well, I think. We have a duty to uphold these rules. We go out and we try and educate as well. And we worked, as I said, with the school safety coordinators. We've worked with businesses. We've worked with anybody that's got in contact that has an issue with parking. The whole objective of our approach is keep the road safe, make parking safe. If we can correct the issue, we will. So when I start looking at the statistics, ideally, at the end of September, October, I'll be able to come to you again with about a year's worth of information, and we'll be able to pull through that. But I was really quite pleasantly surprised. So 1,120 infringements. We are really, really lower than a lot of other councils on our infringements. Yes, the value of those infringements issued after the cancellations have been deducted was reasonable. It was over 87,000. We did cancel 13. We upheld 91. Now, when I look at that, 91 appeals and infringements have been cancelled because they've taken a corrective action. We've managed to get 91 vehicles safely back on the road. No issues. That is a fantastic result. We've had, and this was where it was really, really good. So the people saying, why aren't you warning? We are. We've issued 534 warnings, no infringements. That's educational approach where we could with people. When you take that percentage-wise, over 33% of the issues that we're tackling, we're getting them over the line without doing any enforcement. Then we're having to go further. So we're seeing, now this was brilliant. When I looked at this, each month we do a statistical report. We're now seeing a trend of the complaints coming down in some of our more problematic areas. So historically, Lincoln was one of our highest areas for parking infringements and complaints. This has gone down. This is showing that the continued approach of educating and then making them aware and then having to take enforcement action, the message is being understood, and we're getting less and less and less. I think Lincoln was the lowest number of complaints we've ever had. It's much, much better, and it shows that the approach is working. We also had a problem area within Rolleston. And our parking officer had continually had to go around this one location, issuing infringements. This went on for a period of time. They decided to do a further review to proactively walk around there to make sure it had resolved. And in that patrol, there were 0 infringements issued. That's brilliant. That's what we want. If we can go out, patrol everywhere, and have no infringements given, we've done our job well. We're also getting approached by schools. Now, schools are getting in touch with our school safety officer and asking our parking officer to go down and do an educational approach outside schools. We've done that more than a few times at a number of schools. The most recent one, Aurora Springs in Lincoln, I believe, asked us to come back again and issue infringements because they were really concerned about the safety of the children and the parents not getting the message. It is improving. We are getting parents approaching with their children to the parking officer introducing them, saying they're really, really pleased to see Selwyn taking this issue seriously and trying to keep the roads safe for everybody. We're getting people coming out of nurseries and businesses, again, thanking the parking officer as well. That's not to say we don't have our challenges. So the challenges, the demand from the public is really quite high. We cannot be everywhere all of the time. As I said, we don't go out looking for it, we respond upon complaint. So when we have to go and deal with one, there may be another few at the same area. We've only got so many hours in the day. There is so many more complaints that we just don't get to, but we're doing everything that we can. We prioritise. Also, I took on board what was said earlier from the gentleman that was present, and I can't go into the individual issues on that because that's still a live infringement, and there may be differences of opinion there, but we can always improve our communication. We will be working with comms as we always do. The information is freely available on our webpage, and we do encourage people to read it. The rules here are no different to many other districts. Like I said, it's road user rules. The only slight one would be the parking on berms. That's the same in Christchurch. It's the same in many other councils. And, you know, we can publicise a lot better, I think, for the public, whether that be through a rate notice, I don't know, or a Facebook campaign. The other challenge we have is violence to the staff in upholding this. Now, I don't think people realise it's not always people welcoming the parking officer and being pleasant and supportive. We also get people who are very unpleasant to deal with. We've now had to supply our parking officer with a small body camera for when they're going out, and we're looking at introducing more sophisticated equipment across council on that. We take zero tolerance approach with that, and we do notify the police. We've had 2 threats that are significant enough to involve the police at the moment, and the body cameras are helping to reduce a little bit of that. There is some people feel that the parking officer should also approach them to let them know what's happening. For safety reasons, we will not be doing that. They do not know who they are going to engage with, and it's always on a judgment call. So, with that in mind, around October, November, I'll be able to bring you about a year's worth of statistical information. At present, like I said, we don't target, we don't have a figure, we don't go out looking for the revenue. At the moment, it looks like it's cost neutral and maybe cost positive to council. It will have no impact on rates. The service covers itself. If there is a surplus of revenue at the end of the year, that will be brought back for a discussion, and that may be best served by reinvesting it in road safety, where it should be. Other than that, I will open it up and take some questions where I can.
Thanks for that, Sue. This is an issue that I've had a bugbear for many years, and spoken to this council before I was even on council about it. So it is good that we have finally got to this space. It's now my understanding is we're doing some education, or we were doing education around where contractors are building and such like, because that was a very big issue about trying to access past some of those. And so it's good to hear that we are going out and doing infringement notices and such like, because for some people that's the only thing that they will understand. So it's good to see this. Thank you. Bob.
Council facilities. If you take the Melbourne, South Melbourne Cemetery, you've got a cemetery, and it's just got a country road running through it. And the only way to park is on the verge, because the nearest car park is 1 kilometre away. So for them to park, the only way I can see around it is possibly to put a yellow line on one side if we were really opposed to people parking there, or otherwise they walk back, which would probably be even more dangerous.
Yeah, no, good point. With that, there won't be a curb and channel, I'm imagining. So that is considered part of the road pass, and you can park on there because that's what it's designed for. But if you're finding that was a problem, that's something that we could discuss with the roading team as to, do we need to put yellow lines there? What are the alternatives and where can people park? And we will come up with a solution.
Thank you. Sophie.
Oh, I thought others were ahead of me. Thank you very much, Sue. So I'm the last remaining survivor of the last hearings panel on this bylaw. It was actually only just two of us. It was myself and Mark Alexander a few years ago. And that the particular part about the berms was actually added into the draft. I've been looking back through my notes, and it was added into the draft that went out for consultation, and nobody submitted to say that they didn't want it. It was just for living areas. And actually the only submissions that we had from the public on that draft bylaw were all to do with how long you could have a vehicle with a for sale sign outside your house. So yeah, at the time, obviously nobody really thought a great deal about what the implications of that little line would be. I guess there's always the point that not everybody reads a draft bylaw and can be bothered to submit on one. But it certainly didn't cause any great outrage until a few tickets started being put in there. But it is specifically in living zones. It's not in rural areas or on the side of, you know, your average country street. It's just within the living areas of our district plan.
Yeah, it is in the living areas. So there will be pockets of rural townships that do have our zoned living, and usually the curb and channel. And as I said, we take a real consistent approach. We don't differentiate between anybody. If there's any question of anything, it's a roundtable discussion between the team before anybody goes ahead with anything like that. When it was put in the traffic and parking bylaw, and I can remember this way, I'm starting to feel really old now. I can remember that going in, the conversations being had, and there was an extremely high number of complaints from the public about damage to berms, and this is what generated this. So they weren't as vocal because the people that were complaining didn't get an infringement. They were just unhappy at having to maintain the berms. Then there was the issue of the damage to the berms, the services, and I believe that was why it was put in there, and there was consideration to other councils' berm policies as well. So yeah, it was public feedback that wanted that in there.
Thank you. Lydia.
Well, I mean, it'll be no surprise probably what I'm going to say, but like this, what you're showing us, I entirely support. I understand this is why a parking warden is needed, and that is unacceptable parking. I think the problem that my community has is the parking on grass berms, and the fact that some of our townships that are included in this bylaw actually are only, the roads are single lane, they're narrow, there's no curb and channel, there's no designated parking area, there's no footpaths, and I don't see it acceptable for those people to be issued fines for parking on their grass berm when there is no safe place for them to park. If they park on the street, they're blocking the road, which is more of a health and safety issue.
Yeah, I can answer that one straight away. So those ones that you're referring to, single lanes again, no curb and channel, it won't be enforced. An infringement issued for that there may have been issues where people have, it's called incorrect curb parking. It's where people park the wrong way facing oncoming traffic, which is a real safety issue for people driving at night, in that they think a vehicle, the reflectors aren't there. So that was put in through the road user rules. But so if anybody's had an infringement for parking on a berm and it's not in the residential zone, we can look at that. But it shouldn't come up as an infringible offence. So
very well.
There may be a bit of confusion there, and we're happy to look at any of them.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm supportive of, I guess, the traffic parking bylaw to be reviewed and potentially have more information on there around our rural townships.
Yeah, and I think that's something
and make it clearer for people.
Yeah, we can certainly improve the communication, and we have looked at a Did You Know feature on Facebook to make people aware, because we are full of so many rules and regulations, and people aren't aware of everything. However, a change to the traffic and parking bylaw, changing the rules for one district as opposed to another, I suspect would need consultation. So, yeah, but certainly can be looked at.
Cool, thank you.
And sorry, I just had one more question on there. With the infringement summary, I wanted to clarify, what is the acceptable time frame for infringements to be cancelled? So, for example, when you were talking about vehicles being remediated or made safe, for instance, someone that has had a fine for their registration being out, but then has got their registration improved, that what is your time frame that you work by?
Yeah,
for that?
Yeah, there are different. Everything is considered on its own merit. Now, the objective for us is to get those vehicles back on the road safely, and I would rather not issue somebody an infringement for an expired registration or an expired WOF. What we tend to do is, if they can get that done within a reasonable period of time, and reasonable will be on a case-by-case merit, because no two cases are the same, we will then, usually it's within a month, we will cancel that infringement before it goes any further, if they can demonstrate and prove that they've had that done. There is a sliding scale on that. What we don't want is people who have no intention of getting a warrant of fitness or a registration and wait until they're caught and then find it's better to ask for forgiveness after. So they may be eight or 9 months expired on a warrant of fitness or a registration. All of that is looked at individually, and no two cases are the same. But yeah, our aim is not to get revenue from people, but to remediate the action and get the safe vehicles on the road. Sometimes as well, people will tell us that it's in the post. We have a variety of different tools where we can check that information, and often people aren't always telling the truth. And we can see when the purchases have happened or if it's been done. We just want the vehicles safely on the road.
Yeah. Well, the instance I'm talking about, I don't know whether you've staff are aware of it, but yeah,
Sorry,
someone's remediated it and it's not
to move on. Thank you. Megan?
Yes, I just had a question on interpreting the bylaw. And from my perspective, it's, we haven't had infringement notices at the marae, but we do park on the berm, but I don't know, you know, what's defined as a living zone?
That would be in the district plan. Essentially, we'd go to map viewer. So,
Okay.
I don't think we've had any complaints about the marae or parking or issued any infringements down there. And the first stage would be to look and discuss with people about what is happening. We do keep a history of previous infringements and warnings that we issue as well. So yeah, again, educational approach. And if you would like somebody to come down there and explain what's happening, more than happy to.
I think I just need to first of all look at the district plan to see what's a living zone and see if that applies. And the second part is, when I read this policy, it wasn't really obvious to me what it said. So, not policy, bylaw. So 5.1 says
just move them.
no stopping unless there's it talks about having a notice, a place sign, but then it comes down to 5.5.3 that just says cannot stop wholly on a grass berm. But I think what you've said is that 5.5.3 applies to where it's curved and channeled. Is that right?
Yeah, in the living zone, I believe, yeah.
Okay.
So, but if there's a way that we can look at making that much clearer, open to discussing that.
Just to jump in there, so the marae is not part of the living zone at all, so that's all our urban areas of that township.
Done what Megan's done and looked up the bylaw, but I did not realise that it was actually an infringement or a legal requirement that a parked car had to have a updated registration or warrant of fitness, because if people are working on, they've got two cars and they're working on a vehicle, and one might be the one they use, might be in a garage that has the WOF, the other one's not being driven, it's on the side of the road and it's undergoing work. right to do their own mechanical work, right? So it just seems a little bit crazy that I mean, yes, you have to be WAFT and registered to be driving around, but if you're not driving and it's just parked on the side of the road, not on a berm, that's a ticketable offence.
Yeah, and that's the police would follow up on that as well, Elizabeth. What we do is work with those people and educate them and say, while it's not got registration or warrant of fitness, pop it on your driveway or pop it in your garage and put your legally registered vehicle on the road. So that's how we get around that. But yeah, we educate where we can. But we do also get a lot of complaints from residents that don't want to see a garage forecourt happening outside their houses and people sticking out from underneath a car and doing work on it. So it's, again, case by case, and we try and make people aware.
Phil, thank you. Phil?
Look, I mean, it's been no surprise my stand on this. I think you're doing an amazing job. The feedback we're getting is to be expected. It's an enforcement regime where people haven't had one in the past. Our focus is on safety, and I spoke to you offline, and I was really impressed with the way that you're taking photographs of every offence. You're considering the officer safety, because that's a huge thing. And I think things like our WAFs and license labels of parked cars are a problem to any enforcement environment, so we can't avoid that if we're doing it. I think your 33% warnings to notices is, well, outstanding. And it's good to hear that the complaints are coming down, but I guess my challenge is that to stay focused on safety is really the key thing, to make sure that we're always doing enforcement to ensure safety. Then you really can't come unstuck. And that's it. I don't have a question. That was just a comment.
Cool. So no other questions. Thanks, Sue, for that. And that's the end of our workshop and representation review briefing is at the conclusion of this meeting. So whoever wants to stay, who's staying for this. Thank you, Sue, for all that.
Do you want me to kick into this, or you want to have a break? Shane, are you... That's all right, Shane.
I'm not chairing this, so I want to move.
Please, Chair Nicole. So this... I'll wait till people come back. Sorry? No, this is a review. The materials in the resource part of diligent under representation review. This is just a quick update. It'll take 10 minutes, unless there's lots of questions, which at 4:15, I don't think there should be, hopefully. And is this live?
Quick is good.
Is this live streamed? Okay, great. Well, I'll move into it. So the purpose of this briefing is just to bring the council up to speed with where the representation review has got. We've narrowed down a couple of options to that will go out for some pre-consultation with in April. Consultation. Sorry, it's been a long day. So yeah. So I've just got a few slides here, and I'll take you through those. So next slide. So a bit of background. We had a last review back in 2021. But since then, the population has grown obviously very fast, and the advice was that we probably, because of our fast growing nature of our district, we needed to do another representation review, which we have begun. And so just to remind you, there's the existing shape of the wards with Ellesmere Springs, Melvin and Ralston with a number of councillors. So that's our starting point. So this has been going on since, when was it? Middle of last year, Phil. And look, Phil, who is the chair of the subcommittee, you just jump in if you feel as if I'm going off.
I'm live.
So we have commenced, middle of last year. We did some work in terms of talking to other councils about what they've been doing. We did qualitative and quantitative research to get the residents' views, and we've had a series of workshops to come to our current position, which we'll get to in a moment. Did I go to 2 there? So there's a number of decisions that have been made along our journey. The first one was the electoral system. So we've got various options of the electoral system, STV, which is a single transferable vote, and first past the post. The subcommittee actually did recommend we change to STV, but the council didn't adopt that recommendation for various reasons and have stayed with first past the post. Māori wards were discussed, and there was a decision that we would not have any Māori wards back in November. We did some research, on communities of interest, and this lies at the very heart of the representation review, and it's around how we shape our wards, and our representation is around trying to understand what our communities of interest. So we did quite a bit of work on this for a company called Research First, and there's some key findings which I won't go through in detail, but you can read those for yourselves. Key things that I was slightly surprised was that, not surprised with this, local representation is best for dealing with local issues. Many residents describe themselves as living in Selwyn or Canterbury when speaking to outsiders, indicating a broader regional identity. What I was slightly surprised was a very little connection to wards. So you can read those for yourselves, but it was interesting research, and it did help us shape the number of our wards, etc. We had 3 workshops. The first was in December of last year, and we looked at a number of options in terms of what the wards might look like and the number of councillors, etc. The key driver to this is the plus or minus 10% rule, which means that we have to have a similar type of range of people in a particular area represented by a councillor, and that helps shape the wards. So there are a number of options that were looked at, and all these reports are obviously in Diligent if you want to go back and have a look at the workshops under the representation review folder. Second workshop, we narrowed our options down again, and that was held in February. So we ended up looking at three options: 4 wards, 9 councillors; 4 wards, 8 councillors; 3 wards, 10 councillors. And there was an extra report back for a 3 ward and 9 councillor option to see that was feasible. In February, we further refined the options, and we've landed to a position of 2 options that we're going to go out for I can't say that word today, consultation, 4 wards and 8 councillors, and then the other option that was identified was a 3 ward, 10 councillors option. And they're the 2 options. We've got on our left-hand side is the option 1, 4 wards and 8 councillors. And the 2 diagrams, one's a blown-up version, gives you a bit of an idea of the and the other one is the whole district. So you can see it combines the 2 rural wards, if you want, into one. It's got the Ellesmere ward, and then there's the Ralston, and it joins up the eastern part of the district. And you'll see in both options that the joining up of the eastern part of the district was around border in Christchurch was what we've landed at. Option 2, 3 wards and 10 councillors. So we intend to go out for to engage with the community. It does coincide with the long-term plan engagement, but in terms of statutory timeframes, we didn't have much choice. We're also making a decision on community boards next Tuesday, I think, Phil, is it? And there will be a recommendation, a officer report recommending that we don't include community boards, and that'll be discussed at the next representation review committee on Tuesday evening. And on the right-hand side, I give you some timelines. In terms of the process, we do the pre-consultation, we come back from that, and then we take a report, we come to a final option and take a report to council. The council then adopts and goes out for a formal round of consultation, and then the council issues its preferred option, and then there's an appeal period. So that's just a quick run through the representation review. Phil, have you got any comments?
Yeah, we'll add a couple of things if that's right. Just to get a wee bit more context. We started early, believing that we were going to give ourselves time, but of course quickly sucked up. At the beginning of the process, we went through the objectives of everyone that was involved. So the whole representation, that we had youth, we had community board, and we had obviously ward councillors representing. I also challenged our mayor, who was the person who was elected right across the whole board, to make sure that our process was clean. And by that I mean that we avoided any existing thinking. So if there's any point that there's going to be a challenge, and we were starting to be patch protective, Sam would have come. I'm pleased to say that we've checked them throughout the process, and I don't think there was any times that you felt you've needed to do that. That's probably fair.
And I think the fact that the two examples show quite different board boundaries and the thinking outside of the current system shows that those on the committee were able to think that way.
Yeah. And as I said, the youth participants and the community board participants have a real value to the process, and of course it's left us in a position where wards that you can't really recognise from what we currently have. So part of the process and part of our Tim's magnificent pièce de resistance on how to get people to engage was to throw something out there to say, tell us what you want to name them to. So, yeah. And that's it.
Yep. So I'm happy to take questions or further comments from subcommittee
I'm happy
members.
happy to share that, Sharon.
Just wanted to say thank you very much to those that participated, and especially Rangatahi for being involved in it. I got halfway through, so I'm very appreciative of the work that's been put into it. And I was around that naming and whether a Māori name or mana whenua name could be considered as well, but I guess that'll be part of the consultation moving forward.
We haven't set down the criteria yet about how that's going to happen. So, Sophie.
Yeah, I'm a little wee bit so in terms of the numbers of those populations, are those from the new census?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
So we have to use the 2023 data.
Yeah, we do. Yep.
Okay. So option 2 there is so close to the line it's not funny. Are we not setting ourselves up for having to do this again in 3 years?
Well, we
I don't know if there's any way around that though.
Yeah,
because
so
of the way our population
no,
is.
that's right. We don't have to do it every 3 years. We do it 6 years. We decided we'd do it in a 3-year interview this time because the growth was so exceptional that 10 plus minus 10 plus 10% rationale for representation is completely skewed. That's why we've done another one. You might suggest that 3 years might be the same situation. I suppose we'll just have to.
Yeah, we also don't know where the district's going to grow. Yeah. So if the district grows in a predictable way, then in fact that ward number 2 will change, but ward 3 will actually improve on that position.
Fair enough.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, if we look at the last map on the bottom right, basically, as Sophie's pointed out, with the way that we're going to be growing and intensifying in those other regions, we could end up with one councillor. Those community groups and representing that entire area on their own. It's a pretty insane looking map when you put it into, if you take outside the just representation numbers, but you actually put it into the practical sense, it kind of looks a bit crazy to me. But I mean, obviously the community are going to feedback on this. When does this go out to the public for feedback?
Pre-consultation in April. So we've got a campaign that's been led by a comms team. Going at the same
What
time.
date? Like mid, late, early?
No, second, it goes out for a month. Second, Sarah, looking at you, 2nd of April? Exactly the same as the long-term plan.
So is there a bit of a focus on remuneration for us, hence dropping the amount of councillors?
There was a number of reasons that the numbers played a sort of a shaping influence on it. One of them was the remuneration in terms of potentially attracting good people into the role of councillors. So that was a driver. Sam, I think that you talked to that point. So certainly it was. Look, the factor of councillors representing a larger geographic area was taken into account. We are going out, although there's a staff recommendation saying no community boards, we really want to hear from the public about that. And so there will be a consultation item that actually asks people if they We did look at other council areas, and a lot of other councils do have large areas represented by one councillor.
And the other thing with it is the rural sector, which is the large green area, has very little representation compared to the urban sector, which really throws out that representation within our council chambers.
Actually, if you look at the numbers, there's 3 councillors.
Sorry, Phil, I was referring to in the future. Yep. But still.
Deborah.
I've just got one question, and I guess it's looking at the boundaries of the 2 options for the Eastern Selwyn area. Am I reading this right, that in one of them we have Springston, once again, divided in half, or in one map, and then do we have Springston and in the Ellesmere area for the second map? Well, I'm just looking at communities of interest and just...
The top map and the bottom map are the same for a start. So on each side, there's only 2 maps there. There's not, so the one on the left, the 2 maps that are on the left, the one at the top is just a blown up version of the bottom one. Yes, there is a division line across there. And the map that's on the right, yes, Springs is in the... Springston is in the...
Ellesmere.
Ellesmere, yeah.
Right, that's the way I was looking at it. Yeah.
I'd have to dive right into it to get, but that's the case, yes. Yeah.
Can I just say, I mean, thanks to Phil and the team for doing this work. There was no status quo option, so change had to happen, and the 2 changes are the most sensible options, thinking about 2 factors moving. One is the number of councillors moving. Here's the most sensible option if we move the number of councillors, but keep this similar ward structure to what we've got. And the other is change the ward structure, and then here's the most sensible outcome for councillor numbers around a new ward structure. So keeping those 2 in balance, here's the 2 options that have come out, and we now look forward to hearing from the community on it.
So any more questions on that? Okay. Thank you everyone for listening to Tim.